It's been 8 years since Nebraska last made a bowl game, and I don't know about you, but my patience is running out. There is no place like Nebraska says we'll all stick together through all kinds of weather, but when you don't see the sun for 8 years, it gets harder to honor those words. 2023 gave us reasons to have hope. It gave us reasons to put our faith in Matt Rhule, and most importantly, it showed us that Nebraska isn't a lost cause. The grass got greener in Lincoln. We've talked about the roster, the basic expectations, and what Matt Rhule's second season could look like. But now that we're only 3 weeks out, it's time to make some predictions. So today, I'm running through the entire 2024 schedule to let you know how I think this year plays out. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I drop this season. And if you're ready for the live streams to come back, hit the like button and help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
He's hit and sacked. He's taking a shot downfield, wide open end zone, caught, touchdown.
There are three types of Nebraska fans: optimists, pessimists, and realists. The optimist believes that things will get better by default. The pessimist believes that history set the new standard. But the realist looks at the entire picture and takes all of the information we have into account to make an accurate assessment. Now, I'm a self-proclaimed realist, so I try to be as objective as possible when I drop predictions. And if you look back at last season, I went 8-4 with picks in the preseason and 8-4 again in my weekly game previews. The optimist in me would have finished a bit less accurate. So to try and improve my picks percentage, we're taking everything we know about the teams on this schedule into account to make sure this is my most accurate prediction yet. But before I get to the schedule, we've got to talk about what went wrong in 2023 and how the staff addressed those issues over the offseason. Because if it's more of the same, there's no reason to expect anything other than what we saw before. First is the turnover issue. Nebraska was tied with Georgia Southern for last place nationally with 31, and I went back and looked. 26 of those came from just 4 players. Jeff Sims was responsible for 11. Harburg lost 9. Anthony Grant and Chuba Purdy combined for 6. 3 of those 4 guys aren't even on the team anymore, and Harburg's role's changing, so I'm expecting a lot less out of him for that reason alone. The team knows that turnovers killed their season, and fumbling or consistent interceptions isn't going to be tolerated this year. If they can just cut that number in half, that's worth at least 2 more wins. Next was too many missed field goals, and it's really hard for me to expect improvement here because Alvano's coming off of a groin surgery, and the last time we saw him, he looked the same as he did as a true freshman. The other 2 options are totally unproven. There's obvious ability between the 3 kickers on the roster, but it'll really come down to who makes it when it matters. Will things get worse? Probably not, but Matt Rhule might have to be the Big Ten's Dan Campbell. Last is the limited weapons to keep drives alive. 2 things led to their demise: 4 season-ending injuries to starting running backs and receivers, and limited proven depth to begin with. It was a nightmare. Inexperienced guys were all asked to play bigger roles than they were prepared to. The messy QB situation, on top of the new options learning how they fit in with the offense, added to that drama. And Marcus Satterfield got blamed for all of it, even though it was almost completely out of his control. Patching it up was their top priority. It started with the 5-star QB. Then they added 2 receivers with starting experience and a Power 5 running back from the portal. Add in the 2 receivers ready to play big roles as true freshmen, and we're looking at a totally rebuilt offense. We've looked at these before, but I want you to see how many wins Vegas thinks each Big Ten team's going to have before I give you my predictions. Nebraska's sitting at under 7.5 for minus 102 odds, meaning they're expected to finish the season 7-5. But look at where their opponents are. Ohio State leads the way at 10.5. USC and Iowa are expected to hit 7 or 8, but they also get to play 4 of the bottom 5 teams on this list. The schedule's not hard. When you include the non-conference, they're playing 8 teams who are projected to win 6 games or less. Nebraska's going to be the favorite in 8 or maybe even 9 of their games this year. Now, as we all know, this means absolutely nothing, since the last 2 times Nebraska was supposed to win 8 games, they only won 5. But it's a telling sign for what a competent, disciplined, and well-coached team can accomplish together. I'm about to go through the entire schedule to let you know how I think each game plays out and who I think pulls out the win. Then, if you look at the graphic, you'll see each team's ranking in the College Football 25 video game with my prediction for their final record down there in the bottom left. So let's get started. For the first time in 5 years, Nebraska avoids kicking things off against a Big Ten team, and that luxury shouldn't be understated. They're breaking in an entirely new scheme on offense with a true freshman QB who's never played a game under this much pressure. UTEP's the perfect week one opponent. Their new head coach brought over 10 starters from the FCS school he coached at, and a lot of those guys are listed on the preseason All-Conference USA team. They're talented and they're going to put up a fight, but this is a game one in year one, rebuilding a program that's averaged 4 wins over the last 5 seasons. They say good teams win, but great teams cover. And even though this will be close to a 4 TD spread, Nebraska could start the year looking like a great team. We can lock in win number 1. Love that Colorado's on the schedule. Hate that it's this early in the season. People love bashing them for being all talk and only winning 4 games, but they're a team that's built for September. Dion's a great motivator when times are good. The team rallies around its stars when the whole world's making fun of them online. And when your starting lineup's completely healthy, you play better than your end of the year record says you are. This might be a 6-win team, but at full strength, their starting lineup matches up extremely well with a team like Nebraska. Games like this come down to coaching, player execution, and who wants it more. Rhule's staff has the edge in coaching. Shador and Travis are probably more trustworthy in a pressure situation, but I don't think either team wants it more than the other. They're both desperate, and they're both tired of getting clowned on. In a game where both offenses are going to be able to move the ball, it's hard not to side with the better defense. And when you get 90,000 drunk and pissed off fans packed into the stadium for a night game against their most hated rival, it makes for a really tough environment to win in. So I'm expecting the battle. It could come down to who makes their kicks, but I think Nebraska finally ends the 3-game losing streak. After a very emotional win that took a lot out of the team, a game against an FCS school is the best reward they could ask for. Now, there was a scare against McNeese State back in 2014 before Amir finished things off with a 58-yard TD run, but usually FCS teams don't have the talent to keep up for 4 quarters. Northern Iowa's breaking in a new QB with a new OC. Their defensive coordinator left for Louisiana Tech, and they're replacing almost everybody on that side of the ball. I saw one of their writers predict they'd only win 5 games this year, which would make them worse than the North Dakota team that Nebraska beat by 21 just a week before Frost got fired. Maybe the team has a hangover after Colorado and things look sloppy, but if there was ever a time to play your worst and still be able to win, this would be it. They're moving to 3-0. Illinois comes to Lincoln on a Friday night and needs this win bad since 3 of their next 4 are against Penn State, Michigan, and Oregon. Now, if you're an Illinois fan, you feel like you got a really good chance to pull the upset because Nebraska's only won once in the last 4 years. But the players know Illinois has been a problem and really tough to beat. After an embarrassing loss to Michigan last fall, they played one of their best games of the entire season in Champaign. And not only did they completely shut down Bielema's offense, Harburg put up almost 250 yards by himself in his first start on the road. Illinois wants to run the ball and melt the clock. It's classic Big Ten West football. Their O-line stacked again with 3 new transfers, including a first-team All-Mountain West left tackle. The running back room returns 3 proven threats, including Caden Fegan, who ran for over 400 yards as a true freshman. The defense that gave up 30 points a game to teams like Toledo and Indiana should be better against the pass than they were before, now that they added starters from Texas and Ohio at DB. But even with all these additions, it won't be enough. Rhule knows not to take Bielema-led teams lightly, and so do the senior leaders who've been embarrassed so many times before. There will be letdown weeks, and teams are going to get overlooked, but under the lights in Memorial Stadium is the last place that's going to happen. For the first time this year, the team's got to go on the road, and they're just 1 win away from being ranked in the top 25 if they aren't already. The good news is they're playing Purdue, who's projected to finish last in the Big Ten and could be coming off back-to-back losses to Notre Dame and Oregon State. This team's similar to who Nebraska beat by 17 last season. Hudson Card's back with 4 starters from his O-line. The top 3 receivers transferred in from UCLA, Georgia, and FAU, which should mean they've got plenty of weapons to get the ball to when they're not running it. The defense added multiple transfers to help Ryan Walters improve their numbers in year 2, and they're led by Dylan Tieneman, who's expected to be one of the best safeties in the entire country. They're coming off a season giving up 30 points a game, and outside of a few good days on offense, they struggled to score 21 points most of the time. Purdue sucked last year, and with a ridiculously hard schedule, things aren't going to get much better anytime soon. This one kicks off at 11 a.m., which is 6 hours earlier than the last three. It's in a smaller stadium against a team with extremely low expectations. Nebraska tried giving the game away in Lincoln last year, and Purdue just couldn't do enough on offense to take it. But that won't be the case this time. The lethargic attitude we saw Rhule's team come out with against Michigan State is going to make its return in West Lafayette. And even though they should win and cover the spread as a short favorite, they're going to drop the ball and lose in a low-energy environment. But honestly, 4-1 would be a huge accomplishment headed into October. It would mean they won 4 games they were supposed to and only dropped 1 that they were a favorite in. A September loss would be the defining moment for the rest of the season. It could be used as a positive, another chance for Rhule to check his team and remind him what it looks like to overcome adversity. Because from this point on, the schedule only gets tougher. Rutgers comes to Lincoln after back-to-back battles with Virginia Tech and Washington, but this 3-game stretch is brutal because it's just the beginning. Next up is Wisconsin, UCLA, and USC. Coming healthy with as much proven depth as Nebraska returns, and they'll be in position to pull off a win. Ethan Kaliak-Manis leads the way at QB after transferring in from Minnesota, where he exposed Tony White's secondary on multiple drives to win last year's opener. The O-line combines for 123 starts. Their first team all Big Ten running back averages over 5 yards a carry, and the defense that finished 16th nationally returns 8 starters. But Nebraska's played 2 physical Big Ten teams. Rhule has adjusted at this point in the year, and even if this is the best defense he's seen, they've got film of Tyrone Drones and Will Rogers attacking their weak spots. Rutgers off a bye would be one thing, but the timing couldn't have worked out better. A loss or even a close game with Purdue the week before would wake Nebraska up. And after Colorado, this is the first game on the schedule that's circled for a little extra focus and preparation. It took a strong effort on defense and a high-powered passing game to beat Schiano's team back in 2022. So even if this one's just as low scoring, I'm going to roll with the better QB and receiving core to clutch up at the end. The first bye week came at the perfect time. 3 Big Ten games in a row right before an off week, and then a quick flight over to Bloomington to take on Indiana. Here's all you got to know about their new coach. He's a proven winner. Cignetti turned James Madison into a Sun Belt power with a 52-9 record and multiple all-conference players. His first team's loaded with guys who followed him over through the portal. But it wasn't just the star JMU players. Their QB came from Ohio. 2 running backs came from Wake and UNC after running for over 500 yards each last season. A Texas Tech receiver with 1,700 yards and 3 years of starting experience is the 3rd best guy in that room. There's serious talent on the offense. The question over there is how good can they be on the line, and how will the star Sun Belt players perform in the Big Ten? Their schedule's nothing crazy. UCLA, Northwestern, and UCLA are all borderline bowl teams, but they'll still be more physical than any of these new IU players are used to. Nebraska's going to take things up a notch in terms of size and speed, and I just don't know if Cignetti's offseason training program can do enough in these last few months to prepare him for the Big Ten beating that's coming. It should be a game up until the end, and Rhule's going to remind his guys at halftime that this is the type of spot they struggled in before. But if this Nebraska team's done pretending, they're going to find a way to finish this and move on to 6-1 to lock in bowl eligibility before things get tough. Ohio State week's fun because there's hope for a miraculous upset, but it sucks because there's a chance it'll remind us how far Nebraska truly is from being a serious contender. If Rhule's lucky, they go into Eugene and beat Oregon right before their bye and have a little hangover that week before a road trip to Penn State. But if they lose to Oregon, and I'm predicting they will, Nebraska's going to be the punching bag that Ryan Day takes his aggression out on. Let's go check out Fantasyland though. What if Nebraska's true freshman QB's playing at a high level, they're on a 2-game win streak, and the defensive scheme gives Will Howard problems that day? What if Nebraska keeps things close and it's a tie game in the final 5 minutes? Well, even in that situation, I think it's hard to beat a top 5 team on the road, especially when they're prepared and know that Nebraska's fully capable of pulling off an upset. So whether it's a 21-point blowout, a tight 7-point game, or it takes a field goal in overtime to get it done, I'm going to expect the Buckeyes to come out on top here, and all of Nebraska's goals are still within reach. Week 10's back in Lincoln to take on a UCLA team off a brutal 4-game stretch that includes road trips to LSU, Penn State, and Rutgers with a home visit from Oregon. Now, normally you don't want your opponent to get a bye right before you play them, but they're taking 3 cross-country trips and have to play 3 top 15 teams in less than 30 days. That bye week's not only deserved, UCLA had to earn it. If Nebraska's 6-2 at this point, then they're still a playoff contender, and that means the motivation to bounce back strong off a loss is going to be even more intense. Deshaun Foster inherited a team known for being strong on D, but USC stole their coordinator, 7 starters left for the NFL or the portal, and holding the teams to 18 points a game like they did last year just isn't in the cards. On offense, there's a lot to be excited about with Ethan Garbers back at QB, 4 experienced receivers, 2 of their top 3 running backs from last season, including TJ Harden, who had almost 1,000 yards, and they got 3 starters returning on the line. But I'm not sure they have the depth to play at a high level this deep into the season. Just look at their D-line, which has been one of the best units on their team for multiple years now. They lose their top 5 tacklers, who combined for 27 sacks, and the only guy they added from the portal with starting experience came from Navy. Rhule's going to have his own depth issues to worry about, but after 2 recruiting cycles, I'm a lot more confident in the underclassmen at Nebraska than what UCLA is going to have to play with. I feel pretty good in saying this team should move to 7-2. Now things get fun. Week 11 is the second bye week, and it's a great time to reset before the hardest stretch of the season. At 7-2, the Big Ten championship game's still in play. The third playoff spot's definitely on the table, and to get there, all they got to do is win these last 3. Easy enough, right? Now we're headed to LA. Well, I'm already here, so you're headed my way. Picture this, 75 degrees in November, sunny, hot dog vendors every 6 steps you take, and guys selling beer out of their backpacks. It might smell like piss, but the vibes are immaculate. There's something special about the matchup between USC and Nebraska. It's not a rivalry, but whenever they meet, you can feel the tension. They both have multiple championships, historic stadiums, and national respect as Blue Bloods. They've played each other 5 times since 1969, and both teams are ranked in 3 of those games. This time will be no different. Lincoln Riley's finally put time into their defense. 9 starters return, including 5 transfers who were dominant at Oregon State, UCLA, and Mississippi State. There's NFL talent at all 3 levels. Miller Moss and his young receivers lit up Louisville in the Holiday Bowl for one of their best offensive performance of the entire year. And talent's never been an issue for a Riley offense. We just don't know who their stars are yet, since most played backup roles up until this point. Their strength program turned the Pac-12 boys into Big Ten men over one offseason. But USC's got an Achilles heel that both Notre Dame and UCLA exposed. Bring pressure, sack the QB, disguise your coverage, and make plays on the ball with fast linebackers and quick DBs. Tony White's defense is going to give Lincoln Riley problems. Matt Rhule faced him twice back in 2019. In the first game, Baylor was up 28-3 before blowing it to lose by 3. Then in the Big 12 championship, they couldn't finish in overtime. But there was a talent gap. Baylor had some good players, but OU was a powerhouse. Nebraska and SC are much more evenly matched this season. So with the playoff on the line, I'm putting my faith in Rhule to finally beat Lincoln Riley. Wisconsin's always been a problem. First, it was because they were superior on both lines and just ragdolled the weaker Nebraska teams. Now they're no bigger or stronger, but they play safe and consistent while they wait for Nebraska to shoot themselves in the foot. And I watched that happen 2 years in a row. I want to say 2024 is going to be different, but this is a team that didn't tackle last spring and still held its opponents to less than 20 points a game. Now they're returning multiple starters on D. They added some big-time transfers in Tackett Curtis from USC and Ronald Delancey from Toledo, plus 3 other big names who will make an impact on day 1. The offense that features Tyler Van Dyke, Ches Malusi, and Will Pauling is set up to take a step forward in year 2 under Phil Longo, and until Nebraska can prove that they can make it through an entire season healthy enough to beat a Wisconsin in a cold weather game, I have a really hard time picking them to do it. So I won't. The drought continues, and Nebraska falls to 8-3 on Senior Day. The finale takes place in Iowa City, and whether Iowa's at 5 wins or they're 10-1, this game's going to be just as tough as it always is. Since 2015, Nebraska's 1-8 in this series, with their lone win coming the last time they played at Kinnick. Iowa's built to win games late in the season. They're built to play in cold weather. The last 2 years, their QB play was weak and the O-line dealt with injuries, but I can't predict who gets hurt. We've just got to go with who's more prepared to succeed in a worst-case scenario. Last November, they were both on their last leg. It looked like Nebraska was going to hang on until they missed a field goal and then threw a pick in the fourth quarter. And that's the difference between these two teams. Iowa won't have as many explosive plays, but they have consistent special teams and extreme discipline. They'll wait for you to screw it up. They're as talented and deep as Nebraska, just at different spots. Their strength of schedule and path to the playoffs almost identical, with a Big 12 rival early on, a road trip to Columbus halfway through, and a very mediocre schedule outside of those 2 weeks. They'll both be fighting for a 9th or 10th win, but Iowa's line's deeper. Their offense will be fine even if their QB goes down, and I can't say the same would be true for Nebraska. So today, I'm going to mark this one down as an L. 8-4 would mean Nebraska exceeded my 7-win expectations and put themselves in position to get to win number 9 in their bowl game. And since we're making a full season prediction, we might as well add that in too. So let's say they play in the Music City Bowl against a team like Auburn, OU, Arkansas, or South Carolina. All teams I think are in that 7-win range who would make for a really exciting bowl week. In terms of a floor and ceiling, I think it'll be tough to match the 5 wins from last year. To get to 5, they'd need multiple injuries to key guys, a similar turnover issue, and the defense would have to take a step back. So I'm going to say the floor is 6. And for the ceiling, just count how many of these 5 they could win in the perfect world. Colorado, Ohio State, USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Is it 3? I think that'd be a feat, but it sounds reasonable. So let's say the ceiling's 10. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Who's the most likely loss between the lower tier Big Ten teams? Would you consider 6 wins a successful season, or would you call that underachieving? What's your official record prediction for this season? And which win do you want the most out of the last 3 on the schedule? It's hard not to say Iowa since they're a rival and it's the last game of the season, but winning at USC on the road in their first year as a Big Ten school is too hard for me to pass up. But that's all I've got for today. So until next time, thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.